Christiana, your host. I am co-partner and COO at We the Plug. And as you all have, if you've been following us for a while now, you know the Cafecito Series is just highlighting everyday people doing extraordinary things. We believe that it's important for us to acknowledge those who are in our community who day after day are going out and doing their best to achieve those extraordinary missions and purposes that are given to them. We all have access to them, we're all given them, but not all of us take the opportunity to execute. And so we just want to take time out to highlight those that are, and hopefully it inspires you or encourages you to step out and do your extraordinary work. So welcome to another episode. We are so excited to have with us today Jessie Medina, or Jessica Medina.
Jessie.
Where's your Cafecito? Jessie.
Right here. I got it right here. This is Latina founded too, so I'm really excited to support them.
I love it. I love it. See, I told you.
They're local San Diego. Like they roasted in San Diego, but it's from Colombia, and the founders are Colombian. So I'm like, it's really good to support them too.
I love it. Wait, let's give them a shout out. Push it up closer to the camera so we can see it.
Yeah.
Their company.
How? So I don't know how it's showing up, but it's YIPAO.
Okay, perfect. And it's local to San Diego?
Yeah, they're roasted in San Diego, yeah.
Done. Well, you guys, go. They're open. All right, so Jessica, why don't you, I've been saying your name a ton of times, but Jessie, introduce yourself and what do you do? Let the people know.
Oh, I do so much. So I'm Jessie. I am originally from Argentina. I have been in San Diego 3 years now. And it's really weird to even say that because it feels like I just got here. But I am the founder of FEMX, which is a female empowerment movement overall. That's our goal, is to get women closer to equal, to kind of close the pay gap, to help females become entrepreneurs, grow their businesses. And under FEMX, we have different branches and things that we do. We actually have a physical space that's a co-working and multi-purpose space.
Beautiful.
Very feminine, very beautiful.
It's called
FEMX Quarters. It's in San Diego. And it's just really like an Insta-worthy kind of space. That everyone's welcome. And that's really like our goal, is that everyone, and that's been one of my goals as someone that, is an immigrant.
Yeah, no, and just for everybody who has visited San Diego or plans on or actually lives here, the location, the co-work space, the event space is located just outside of Old Town, right?
It's right outside of Old Town, right next to Little Italy too, so we're really close to everything, really central. So it's a convenient place to be at.
Yeah, it's a beautiful space.
Thank you.
So, one of the things that I was sharing a little bit before of our connection is that you have this powerful energy and spirit that illuminates whenever someone is in your presence. And you shared a little bit with me that time I met. I have to acknowledge it because it's so powerful. When you connect with people in person and instantly, like, they draw you in just with their presence. I mean, you wasn't saying much. It was just, you were setting us up. You were like, here, have a seat. Do you want something to drink? But I could tell that you was someone that was very driven beyond just, I want to make a difference in this world. There was something else that was pushing you. So talk to us a little bit about, how did you get to the place? You mentioned that you were an immigrant to the U.S., but can you share a little bit about the journey?
Gosh, there are so many things, and I think that's how we find purpose in life, is kind of like following those signs and understanding that a lot of the challenges that we face are actually just guides, to our purpose. And for me, I faced a lot of challenges along my journey. When people ask me, like, oh, how are you so wise or something, I'm like, pain, pain makes you wise. Like I had lived through a lot of things, and that's most human beings. That's why it's beautiful to listen to stories And I had a lot of experiences that drove me closer and closer to what I'm doing now. I always knew I wanted to help people. Like growing up, being a little girl, I always knew I wanted to help people. I always knew I wanted to speak and inspire others, but I never knew exactly in what capacity, who I was going to be talking to. And then when I think one of the main things was the immigrant experience and seeing the things that, you know, I went from just being in my country and being comfortable and not really understanding like what immigrants go through to them becoming an immigrant. Because, you know, living in Argentina, we have a lot of immigrants there too.
Sure.
And so I was little, but I still didn't, I never knew what they went through. Like I didn't know, right? I even had
Yeah.
friends from other countries, but I was so clueless. And this is one of the reasons why it's so important to learn and to talk to people, because I was so clueless until I myself became an immigrant. And then I started seeing all these things. And I remember I had moments where I was like, is this what like my friends down there were feeling? Like, or did they experience things like that too? And I was just like clueless. And I think it gave me a lot of empathy, and it also, you know, taught me, it humbled me. It just gave me empathy for people. I actually got bullied when I first got here. And so like little things like that where, you know, the cultural shock, then, you know, fast forward, like I went to school, graduated early from high school, went to college, and you know, going, I kind of like climbed the corporate ladder. I'm giving you like the super like condensed version. But you know, during my corporate years too, I got to be pretty high up. I got to become an executive in the company. And being a Latina, being the only woman in the room, I also experienced a lot of things that I knew weren't right. You know, just from being even a woman, but also Latina, you know, microaggressions, jokes, you know, things that I was just like, that's not appropriate. And I started all these little things that started kind of shaping me and making me really passionate about women and kind of like pursuing equality. And then the Me Too movement came along, and during that time we got a new president for the company, and I reported to him, and he started sexually harassing women, like really bad. Not like, oh, you look cute or something. Like it was really bad. And so for me, that was like something that I could not understand why the company protected him, because they did. They told us straight up that, like, HR told us that they couldn't touch him. And these were the things that kind of opened my eyes. I think I was really naive even then with that stuff, like thinking, sometimes I would think, and, you know, to my shame now, but I would think back in the day before all this happened, like, why don't women speak up sooner? Like, why don't they say something, right? And then when I was in that spot, I realized, like, wow, like, this is why it's extremely hard. And when you speak up, you don't, you know, get, people don't understand what you're going through, or they justify it, or they justify the person, then it becomes even harder to speak up, because then now you're like, okay, well, if I speak up, I'm gonna get crap for it. So again, this is super condensed, but all these things made me really passionate. Like, this is where I'm gonna show up. This is where I want to work. And I always knew I wanted to be a business owner too. I always knew I wanted to start my own thing.
Wow.
And so this gave me like that focus. This really showed me like, no, I want to help women, because if we're starting our own businesses, if we are financially stable or thriving, then it's easier for us to become more independent. It's easier for us to stand up for each other. It's easier for us to let go of that toxic relationship. And what people don't understand is that a lot of people stay in these situations because they feel like they don't have a choice. And for a period of time, I felt like I didn't have a choice, because I didn't want to lose that job. Because, you know, it was a great job. Like, that was like, oh my gosh, like, you literally just like
You've
reached
made it.
the thing. Like, how dare you quit? How dare you consider leave? How dare you, you know, like. And for me, it was like, I got to a point where my health it started suffering. I started getting anxiety, which I didn't even know at the time it was anxiety, because I hadn't experienced it before. But I started getting all the symptoms, and once that happened, I was like, I need to leave. And I remember saying, even if I have to go work at a McDonald's, like no matter what, I'll leave. You know, I'm more important than this
put in my
job
2 weeks
title
notice.
and pay. My dream city was San Diego, so I literally just like
got my
decided I was
dog
just gonna
and
make it
drove
all
to
to San
San
Diego with my all my stuff. And
Oh my God. You hear these stories all the time where people are like, I had $500 in my pocket and I got in my car and you're saying that's what you did. I want to, before you go further into the story that gets you to FEMX, there was 3 things that really stood out to me that I think in this time that we're in right now with the Black Lives Matter movement and us fighting for racial equality and along with the Me Too movement and that stuck out with me. The first thing was that you said that you knew that your friends, when you were in your home country, was having different experiences, but it wasn't until you yourself was put in a situation where your comfort was challenged, where your everything you knew, everything that was familiar to was challenged, that you then start to turn to have empathetic thoughts, or at the least start to hold a space for those. So now awareness is coming to place and you're starting to do something with that awareness, which I believe the next step is then consciousness of it. The other thing that stood out to me was you were talking about microaggression. And I think that is something, especially when we talk about it specifically to gender and then ethnicity or racial microaggression. I know me personally, I've experienced both. And I know there are people that I've experienced with them microaggression as they were immigrants. And or just spoke a different language. Maybe they were born here, but because they could speak a different language, all of a sudden they experienced this aggression that nobody could identify what it was. You just knew it didn't feel good. You were frustrated with it. You tried to go to leadership and was made to believe that you were imagining all of it. So I wanted to connect with that. And then the other thing you talked about, deciding that your worth was more valuable than the conditions you were in. And I want to also unpack that a little bit, because as women, you know, it doesn't matter what your circumstances is. I believe every woman at some point in their life has been told, listen, there are women who come before you, or listen, do it for the family, and maybe men have experienced this too. I'm not a male, so I can't speak for them, but I know that I have experienced this. All of the women in my life has experienced at some point being told, look, it's not that bad, or suck it up for family, or listen, this is a lot of money that you're making, or pray through it. And believe me, I love God and I pray, but it's like none of this is worth me sacrificing. I know I brought up 3 very powerful things, but you know, whatever you want to expand on.
Yeah, I mean, I do want to address a little more the part about the immigration aspect, because it happens with all minorities. It happens with Black Lives Matter. Like, we're talking about all these issues now, we're becoming more aware, and it happens all the time. And I think unless you've experienced something in that, like, I cannot speak for like a Black person because I have never been in those shoes. I can empathize, I can listen, I can learn. And so again, going back to that story, I could not have really been in the shoes of an immigrant until I became an immigrant, you know. And I've always been a really positive person. So even when I first got here, I was still like really positive. Even though I would see things at first, I would be like, no, that wasn't racist. I was just like, in my head, I would justify it for a few years, you know, because I've always been so positive that I always tried. So people sometimes think like, oh, people just want to victimize themselves or something, you know. So at first, being a positive person, I would always try to justify the little microaggressions, the comments, and I genuinely would make myself believe, that's going back to cognitive dissonance, that no, that wasn't a racist comment. You know, I would dismiss it right away or something, justify it, even if it was towards me. And it wasn't until I had a really strong experience where there was no way that I could justify that is anything else but racism, that I was like, no, this is real. Like I had been,
And I
you
think
know,
that
just
I
not
have
only
experienced
validated my own experience, but it made me understand all the other people and the other people that are less privileged than I, because you know I have light skin, or maybe you know, at that point when that happened to me, that really bad experience, I was a college student. Like, what about the ones that come here and don't even speak English? You know, the older people that come here as immigrants and they can't even communicate, right? So like there's even different levels, you know, of things that we experience. And for me, that experience, and I will share this experience because I think it's important, because with everything that's happening right now,
more comfortable
some
sometimes to
people,
say,
I think, no, you know, maybe people are being overly sensitive, maybe they're reading into things, maybe they're victimizing themselves, whatever. And it's not true. So unless you are in those shoes, you really can't speak for anyone else. In my experience, that really bad experience that I had as an immigrant, where I could no longer justify it, I actually got pulled over for making an illegal U-turn. And I got pulled over, and I was at that point a really innocent, naive, you know, really good girl, like, you know, just going to college, going to church every Sunday, like never committed a crime or anything, where like I got pulled over and I never thought anything of the police. Like I never, when I first got pulled over, I was not scared. I you know, I had no filter like that, right? Like my conscience was clear. So like I just got pulled over. I was like, okay, I'm going to get a traffic ticket, right? So I got pulled over. Obviously I have an accent, so like, you know, I got a little nervous too when he started questioning me. And merely on the fact, like, he didn't even ask for my driver's license. He's like, at first he's like, hi, you know, how's it going, whatever. And then I started talking a little bit nervous, and you know, I imagine he noticed my accent, you know, noticed I was Latina. And he said, you made an illegal U-turn. I said, yeah, I'm sorry, I apologize, like I was trying to avoid the traffic, because there was a lot of traffic in that street, and I'm not justifying that. But he said to step out of the car. And me being, you know, always taught as an immigrant too, again, and now I've processed all this, and I've learned, like, I was always told, like, you comply with the authorities. You know, you're told these things, but you think they're normal. But there's people here that don't ever have to think about being car, which later on I found out, like, he had no reason to make me step out of the car, you know. But I wasn't questioning anything. I was complying. Step out of the car, you know, he's like, you know, have you been drinking? Have you done drugs? And I'm like, no, like I literally never drank, never did anything like that. So I was like, no. And I was kind of like, had this like nervous smile, you know. I was just kind of like, it was just like, I felt like I just didn't know how to act. Like I was just
like,
nervous,
he
you know.
said,
And gosh, I'm not even gonna say the words. He actually said all the words, but he started saying to me, like, you effing at Mexican. Like, he actually said the words. He said, you know, effing Mexican, like, I'm gonna get you deported. Like, he automatically assumed I was Mexican, which even if I was, who cares, right? Like, he said, I'm gonna take you to jail so you can get deported. I'm gonna make sure that they go and find you tonight. He put me in handcuffs, like, out of the blue, no reason, no explanation. I didn't know my rights at the time. Like, I just thought, what happened is I kind of giggled a little bit, because it was so surreal, the experience. So I kind of giggled as he said that, like, and I was like, I'm not Mexican. Like, I was trying to like explain myself, and at the same time kind of like in disbelief of what was happening. Me on the curb, and all this happened like a dream. Like, it's like I wasn't even there. Like, I was outside just watching this movie or something. He searched my car, didn't find anything in my car, and he still like took me to jail. And that's something that I rarely ever share, but it gave me, so anyway, so then I still didn't know why he arrested me. And the funny thing is that people later on, after everything happened, they were like, you had the right to ask, like, why you were being arrested. Like, you know, he had no reason. So anyway, so he takes me to jail. This is Friday night. And so I had to wait until Monday to see a judge. So I was actually in jail for like 3 days and 2 nights, which again, for someone who just made an illegal U-turn, that's ridiculous, right? And again, I didn't question anything. I all these things that we don't understand. That's why, again, I'm not Black. I don't understand the entire experience. But when I hear the stories, like I relate to that, to a little bit to that feeling of like, you know, it sucks that you have to fear the police. It sucks that I went from being a woman that believed that the police is safe and like, yeah, if you get pulled over, you pull over and like you do everything they tell you, to a person that then became cautious and then became like overly aware. Now I know that like, oh, I don't even want to can be unfairly treated in this situation, you know. Anyway, I went to prison with, or not prison, I went to jail, and there's a lot of beauty in that experience, because I met a bunch of other women, and a lot of which were criminals. They had actually done really bad things, and they kind of went around that night and they were telling their stories of what they did, and I was there sitting like, oh my gosh, like I don't have anything cool to say, you know. I was just like, at that time I legitimately wish that I had something like, yeah, I robbed a bank or something, because I was like, gosh, I don't have anything. But it gave me so much empathy listening to these women, because in that moment when women were opening up and crying, and we were like literally in a circle on the ground, they were women committed, but humans. I saw their humanity, and we were all the same. And that was another milestone in my life where I became really passionate about women, about empowering women, because when I listened to their stories, I got to listen to the background. Like, well, I had to feed my kid, so I stole this because I've been to jail before, and now I can't find jobs because nobody wants to hire me. So now I have to feed my kids, so now I have to keep doing this, right? And I remember talking to that woman and like teaching her how, because I was at the time in business school, so I taught her like, well, if you start your own business, no one is gonna check your record because you're gonna be your own boss. And like I literally like really like put in her head to like start super challenging. They were kind of driving me to a lot of the things that I do now. Anyway, so then back to the story, you know, a month later I went to court. The judge was outraged. And this is what happened too, and this is something really important too. When I got, because, you know, they gave me a public defender. That's not like having a private lawyer. I didn't have money for a private lawyer. A public defender doesn't communicate with you. Like, it's not like a lawyer that you have on call and you can ask a bunch of questions. So for the longest time, for like a month, I had no idea what I was charged with. I had no idea, you know, what was going to happen to me, if I was going to get, because even as an immigrant, you can still get deported if you get charged with a
Yes.
crime. So in my head, I was afraid, you know. I was like, wow, like, so, and I have faith too. So I was praying, and you know, I was positive. I was still like, okay, no, everything's going to be fine. But things that people have to think about that other people don't have to think about. And this is why it's important to really open up and listen to people that are different from us, because there are things that are very real for the Black community that unless I'm willing to listen and open up, like I will never understand, right? Like unless you are there, or at least you open up and listen. So anyway, so then I became really passionate, and it was cool because by the way, when I got pulled over, I had just left work and I was working at this restaurant, so I had the logo of the restaurant, so the people knew that I worked there. And so someone calls at the restaurant a few days later, and they're like, you have a phone call, which is really weird. Like no one calls you at the restaurant. And it was a woman that I had talked to about starting a business, and she was literally crying, and she was like, Jessie Medina, I remember your name. I will never forget. I want you to know that I will pursue starting a business. I will change for my kid and this and that. And I remember I just started like bawling my ass out, like at work, you know, like the cash register was right there. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like, and these are moments that I will never forget. And even till this day, when I drive by a jail or a prison, like I always think of the women in there. I always think like, I always do a little prayer, like God bless them, you know?
Yeah.
But these are the moments that kind of define you, and we can choose how they define us too, because we can choose if that trauma is going to make us bitter, it's going to make us resentful, it's going to make us give up, or we can choose it to turn it into something positive. We can choose to be more empathetic. We can choose to make it for a long time. The first time I talked about this experience was like 2 months ago. For the first time, this happened when I was in college. So it happened at least I don't want to give away my, years ago.
Years ago. Let's just.
I don't even, that's the whole thing. I don't even know like how many years, at least like 7 years or something, right? Like a long time ago. And I hadn't talked about it until someone in a podcast, somehow it came up like this. And that was my first time talking about it. And this is my second time talking about it. But like, these are the things that I think are important to share, because these are things that are very real. And being an immigrant, you have to think about these things. I remember even just being like a legal resident, like you still have the potential, right, that if you do get arrested for whatever reason, you can still be kicked out of the country, right? Even if you've been here most of your life, even if people think like, oh, why don't people become legal, or this, like, there are so many misconceptions and misinformation out there. And things that people just don't understand unless what happened is I finally went to court. And when I went to court, the public defender said, they have a deal for you. If you sign this paper saying that you're not going to hold the police department accountable for it, like you're just going to give them, because the true story is that he was straight up racist. The cop was straight up, they had it recorded, they had the whole thing recorded. He didn't find anything in my car. He straight up said, I'm going to get you deported, effing Mexican, this and that. Like, it was so clear. Now, looking back for me at that time, I was so afraid and I wanted it to go away so bad, like whatever, because I still didn't know what the judge was going to say to me.
Yeah.
That because what he had put there, because they told me that what he had put there is that I was, that it was obstruction of justice. And because I had an attitude. Again, I did giggle a few times. I was like either gonna cry or gonna laugh. Like I was just like, in that moment, I was just like so. It just seemed so surreal that I was like, kind of like, okay, like I'm not what, like. So anyway,
so he arrested you for nothing, and
he arrested me for a illegal U-turn, which obviously wouldn't hold up anywhere.
But that's not an arrest, right? I mean, that is a ticket.
So, yeah. So basically, they made me sign this thing that said that they would drop that charge of, because again, me being an immigrant, I was like, well, that charge is enough to somehow get deported. Or like later on when I applied for citizenship, just having the charge of obstruction of justice, as far as I understood, like just having any charge in your record is a reason for them to just deny your citizenship. So in my head, it's like, okay, whatever, I'll let it go. I don't care about that. I just don't want to have this on my record. So I signed that saying that I wasn't going to pursue anything against the police department or against the cop if, they dropped the charges. They dropped that and the U-turn, which that wasn't really a criminal charge. But anyway, when I finally I signed that, I had like 3 minutes because the public defender had a line of people that she was kind of telling us like what the deal was going to be or whatever, and you sign or whatever, and then you're next in the court. So it's like everything happens fast. You don't have the same resources, same whatever. You just want it to go away. I signed that, which looking back, I'm like, wow, like that, he totally got away with it. He straight up got away with it. And God knows what else he's done to other people. Eventually fair. I know that life takes care of things and people learn, and he will have his own journey. So I know that. But anyway, I signed. I remember going to a judge, and the judge was a woman, and obviously she just saw it briefly, and I was like, why were you in jail for 2 nights? Like she was even confused, and I was like, I don't know, Your Honor. Like I was so, just like, I don't know. But they dropped those charges, and again, you look at me.
You're not that old, right? You're a millennial, and that was just a few years ago. We're still talking about 2000. I mean, there's so many stories that I've heard time and time again from people who are undocumented to people who are documented, who are in the country for on work visas or school visas, or and all experience this at times, have stories of hostile experiences, whether it's at doing simple errands, or it's connecting with law enforcement. And again, everything is not absolute, right? It's not everyone has had this story, or all Americans have been treating immigrants this way, but it's enough where, again, you have to wake up in the same thing with the Black Lives Matter movement. No one's saying that all white people are racist, or all Black experiences are the same. No one's saying that, but there is enough proof in history from where we've seen discrimination with housing and jobs, and I mean across the board everywhere, and it's now in our face because of social media. No one can dodge it. It's right, we see happening. And so I think it's so important, Jessie, for those that are allies, and I'm an ally of the immigrant community, just like you're an ally of the Black community. And again, no one is saying that, our harshest stories are the same. But again, when you have experienced something that is unjust, don't just stand up and fight for your own situation. You stand up and you fight for all injustices. And I appreciate you sharing and being transparent and sharing this story, because I had not heard you
one of the things that always comes up,
share that.
like, oh well, nobody cares about, right, I think sometimes as women we don't understand why it's important to share these stories, and partly because we think that it doesn't matter, or that it doesn't need to be heard, or that people don't care to hear it. And I think that goes back to just be kind of like the oppression, going back to being silenced at times, going back to, in Spanish there's a saying that it says calladita te ves más bonita, and it means like quiet you look cuter, or you look better. And it's said to women. It's like a known phrase for women. It's existed for so many years that it's just like a saying. Obviously now we're like, okay, that's horrible. But for the longest time, that was a perception, right? For the longest time, is the woman that's quiet, that's proper, that's, all these things. This is how you look pretty. This is how you are put together. I know now we say our generation says calladitas no more. And that's true. That anybody else that maybe is like, well, I'm not an immigrant, I'm not Black, or I'm not doing this or that.
Or I'm not a woman.
That you're passionate about.
Yeah.
Find a cause and stand up for it, because when we advance justice, we're just advancing it for ourselves. We're saying it's not okay. We stand up for human rights. We stand up for justice. And you're saying, again, going back to, if we hold the police accountable for Black people, that means they're going to be accountable for anybody else too.
Yes.
Justice will not be served until the lowest of our society, the minorities, the poor people. Why it's important that everybody in some level or capacity gets involved. So at FEMX, the goal with FEMX is to reach equality. And for me, it's creating spaces, whether it's online or in person, that help advance women and help women to thrive. And here at FEMX Quarters, we're creating those safe spaces. And I'm very proud of the fact that since the beginning of time that we started, we have always served, diversity. We have always welcomed everyone. We have always empowered and built resources for everyone. So we have the co-working space. We have the co-working space is really accessible, because I think that's really important, that everyone can use the space, that everyone has access to the space. So the pricing is really overly competitive compared to other co-working spaces in the area. We also rent it for photo shoots, film shoots, anything, any creative use. We rent it for private events, workshops, summits, all kinds of things. It's supposed to serve the modern entrepreneur. When I was an entrepreneur, I was at a co-working space too, and I didn't have all the things that I needed. I was like, I need a space to host an event. I need a space to do a photo shoot. And I didn't find a space that had all of it. So for me, it's like, how do we serve the modern entrepreneur? Because modern entrepreneurs are hosting events, and they are doing workshops, and they are doing all these things. And so we're doing that. We also have a FEMX podcast, and we have a podcast room here where we rent it out to people that want to do their own podcast. We also offer services, like if someone needs help starting the podcast, we help with that too, if needed. We also have an online community. We also have a summit, which right now, I don't know if it's going to happen in January. It's been happening in January, but we might not do it this year, we'll see, or it might be virtual. But we have all these different resources for women to thrive, for women to come along and join us, create a better space in our world. We actually have scholarships too. So like we've always had this policy that if anyone for whatever reason can't afford to come to an event of ours or to come to something of ours, all they have to do is just send me a DM saying, hey, I can't pay for it. Like, no questions asked, nothing. Like, okay, here's the ticket. And so the people that actually do pay for things are essentially sponsoring other people too that want access, that need these resources but can't afford it yet. And part of the mission is to help those women become financially independent. So that's why I'm so passionate about helping entrepreneurs, because I think when we have that freedom, like when I was able to start my own company, I was able to really do things my own way. I was able to say this company is going to be diverse. It's going to be women-led. It's going to be all the things that I didn't like in the corporate world. I was able to change it because now it's my own baby. I love to empower younger women. You know, so I have a lot of Gen Z
how you
here.
built this up, and I cannot wait for you to share that story in a book one day, the how, because I know that whenever you do host events, you always ensure that those that are representing FEMX do share the how part, because that's where the meat and potatoes are. You know, you can tell me all day about the end result, but it's like,
Right.
when you can show me and give me the tips that obviously I have to do the work, but you know, I'm just excited about when that book is going to come out. And the other thing, I'm glad you mentioned the community and how enriched it is. I was able to connect because my background is in mental health, and I'm an advocate for it on a personal level as well, because I've struggled with levels of depression at times. And one of the things I really appreciate is that you give so much time and energy in that space. And it's one that is comprehensive. So you're not just coming from a traditional viewpoint of mental health, but you come from this holistic standpoint and really invite a collective body of women who can come in educated, either through their own, you know, personal development or formally educated. But it's a great community. I've connected with some amazing people in that space. So anyone who is looking to connect, do go on there and check it out. There's a lot of virtual work that Jessie and the company is doing that I think would be valuable to you all. And just spread the word. I think something that we haven't really talked a lot about, but we've shown it, right? Which is you got to build your own table. And the beautiful part about all of this, as you're building your own table, when you look to your left and your right, and I'm gonna get a little emotional probably, but I don't care, because it's how I feel. But I started building my own table, and my business partner and I was brought together. And then we started building a table together called We the Plug, along with all these other people that started coming together. And then we started connecting with people like Jessie and seeing, oh, you have this part, okay, I have this part. And before you know it, we all was trying to figure out, okay, how can we all work together? I share this because when Jessie was talking about being in jail and talking to this woman about starting home business and being an entrepreneur, she wasn't saying to this woman, you got to go it alone. You got to pull yourself up by your own bootstraps and all this other crazy nonsense that we say entrepreneurship is an option for you. Guess what? We're saying, hey, come over here, join FEMX, join We the Plug, join the community. There are people here that can help lift you up, that can work alongside you. I mean, Jessie has many programs that she just mentioned. I mean, you want to start a podcast? She helps with that. You can't afford it? Still come and connect with her, because again, what we're doing is, and We the Plugs is the same way, I'm the same way. We don't want anything to stop you from moving forward in your purpose. So whatever is being pulled, you know, intrinsically your feelings. I feel like I'm talking to somebody today, but whatever it is that is intrinsically pulling at you from within, lean into it. And when you lean into it, and if you're listening to this, a caption of this, connect with FEMX, or connect with We the Plug, or connect with all of us, but just connect with people. Start talking about your vision. Jessie couldn't have done it alone. I couldn't have done it alone. It's not built to do it alone. As an entrepreneur, if you know anything about this space, you know you need community to survive. Mental health is going to be all up in that mix. But just lean in, connect with community. I don't know if you have any other parting words before we wrap today, Jessie, but what is your call to action for those that may be listening? That's my call to action.
I think that's a beautiful call to action. Connect, don't be afraid. Sometimes we're afraid to reach out. Sometimes, we think we're going to be rejected, and I totally understand that, because again, going back generations, women, they reject you when you try to get a loan sometimes for business. We're
By the
used
way,
to
we're
that.
working on that, so
Yeah,
we will
so
not get rejected
exactly,
by
and
loans
especially
anymore. Yeah.
places like
Yeah,
FEMX,
we
places
need
like With a
we
Plug, like we're like the opposite of that. Like, we're saying yes. We want you here. We're open to meeting you. We're open to hearing your story. And I think, we are, like you said, that new generation that's creating that change. And my sisters are here right now for the summer helping out with FEMX. And, they're younger. They're like 20 and 19, and they literally, I don't want them to experience any of the stuff that I experience. And so,
Because
like,
they're
even
going to have
when
their own journey of nonsense that they got to deal with.
yeah. So this is what we're here for change, to impact change. We want to hear from you. Don't be afraid to reach out. Don't be afraid to ask. Sometimes people reach out to me like those, because I always tell people, you can send me a DM. Sometimes I don't see it right away, but if people are like, oh wow, you actually replied, and I was like, yeah, like I said I would, like why did you think that I wouldn't? Like sometimes we are afraid to reach out or ask for something. I've also told female entrepreneurs, like, let me know if you need help with something. I tell my friends that a lot. Let me know if you have
She
any
does.
questions
She
for
asks
the
me
podcast.
a lot.
And then I'm like, no, but I mean it. Like,
She
let me
does.
know.
You're right. You do. You do. I have some
Just reach
stuff
out.
I'm going to be following
You
up on.
you gotta knock, like that. I love that saying, like, knock and it will be open. Like, maybe you have to knock on a lot of doors sometimes.
Yep.
It's not always gonna be easy.
Yeah.
But you gotta knock. That's something that women can be better at, that we can improve. Is like actually knocking, actually asking, speaking up.
I agree. So tell the people where they can find you again on social media.
They can find us. They can find me at Jessie Medina Official, or they can also just check out the FEMX Quarters, and send us a DM. We'll reply. Come check us out. We're in Mission Hills, right by Old Town. So just stop by. We have a coffee cart outside. We bow coffee. So, like, grab a coffee with me. I'm happy to say hi. And we're here for you.
Wear your mask when you do it, because in the state of California, we got to wear masks. But it's fine. Wear your mask and pull it down, drink, and then put your mask up and talk. Well, Jessie, thank you so much for taking the time out today to speak with us. We know you have a lot going on, and especially during these COVID times, you've had to do a lot of pivoting. And I just thank you for taking out time to speak with us. I mean, you're doing so much, and we just really thank you and love you for all that you're doing. So again, you guys, you know where to reach her on social media. She's also on We the Plug membership page. So if you're a member on there, definitely go on there and follow her and connect with her on there as well. Again, thank you so much for tuning in for another Cafecito. I'm your host, Christiana. Thank you so much. Love and light to everyone. Talk soon. Bye.